Hey everybody, DIY Dad here, back again for another video involving my 2021 Can-Am Spyder F3. In the previous video, I updated the headlights in this to the TricLED LED headlights with the integrated driving light, which you can see right there. What I never did though was anything with the fog lights, which are right back here. My bike didn't come equipped with them, but I purchased the kit from TricLED to add a driving light slash fog light into that space, and that's what we're going to do today. When the kit came, it did have instructions. I don't know what I did with them. That was quite a while ago, so we're going to figure out our way as we go. What I know about these bikes and what I know about TricLED is all of their things are as plug and play as possible, and these bikes were pre-wired for just about every possible accessory they could have on them to make life a little bit easier for the driver and save BRP some money. So we're going to figure this out as we go. Here we go. So this is the kit as it comes from TricLED when it's taken out of the box. You've got two little mounting brackets. You have a plate that's going to get mounted to the bike, a box of hardware, TricLED sticker, in case you're one of those guys. And then you have this assembly. So I have my switch, and I have this, which is actually three different parts that they've pre-connected together. So I have the two different fog light assemblies hooked into plugs. We're going to separate those out, and then we'll kind of work our way in here. Okay, so applying a little bit of simple logic to the problem that we have at hand here, opened up the hardware kit and just separated it into two distinct groups. And the minute you do that, it's pretty obvious how this is going to go together. There are these two smaller screws and lock washers or lock nuts that go on the back. That's going to attach that bracket to that. These three larger bolts with their washers and lock nuts, that's going to run through these three larger holes and connect it to the bike. So we can pre-assemble this a little bit. There's a distinction here on the shape of these, just based on the shape of the front of the bike. I'm going to imagine that that's what we're dealing with here. Is these are probably going to be interior mounting surfaces and then an exterior, allowing this to slope down kind of along with that front edge of the bike. So I'm going to assume that we're set up this way. I'll test that assumption once we get the cover plates off on the bike. But initially, I'm going to assemble this by taking this bracket, laying it on here, like this. And you can see there are obvious adjustments for going up and down with this. So I got a little bit of, should I go top or bottom? We'll figure that out. Run my screws through just lightly, not over tighten anything, because I figure I can always snug this up later. I don't know what I'm looking at for clearances yet, so we'll figure out if we're going front or back once we've got the bike open, and then we can do the rest of it. For attaching the actual lights to the brackets, there's no hardware for that, but there are some pretty obvious screws here that'll have to be threaded out, and then that'll get rethreaded through here. So I know how this is going to go together loosely. The next step is going to be figuring it out specifically, and that means getting panels off the bike. Now, just like anytime you have to go into the side covers, this isn't overly hard to do. There's an access panel on both sides of the bike. This little thing just keys over. This panel lifts up and out of the way. That exposes these three body clips that'll have to be taken out. And then the rest are going to be these torque screws. And there's 4 of them, I believe. So you got these 3 clips, this one here, and then down around on the side, there are 2 as well, there and there. Once that's done, this whole panel will kind of pull out like this and off the bike. And it should come off pretty simply without any other needed pieces. Looking here, yeah, that clip goes into a piece of the body and doesn't actually connect to this white panel, so we should be good there. We'll see if my memory actually holds true. So I'm going to pull this side off first. So again, I'm going to work out these 3 body panels. These are just the kind of your standard clips. So you can put a little standard screwdriver in here, pop this middle plug out, and these will pull out. And then these guys, I believe, are T25, but I'll confirm that as well when I come back. So I'm going to pull this off and we'll go on to the next part. Okay, side panel is removed. It was just the 3 across the top. So it is just 3 guys here. And then the 4 bolts that we talked about, or 4 screws rather, they were T25. So I took those off and then the panel comes off. There is an odd thing, if you haven't pulled these off before, there's a little kind of catch point back here. You don't have to take this off or anything, but your panel has a screw that sticks out that slides into this little notch as a way to align it. So when you're pulling it out, you end up sort of working it like this. You kind of bring the panel this way and then pull it straight towards you, and it'll come off nice and clean. Stops it from vibrating when the bike is reassembled. So what that does then is it gives us access to this, which is where our fog light exists, and it allows me, or would exist, and it allows me to confirm a few of my suspicions here. So one, this bracket does in fact go just like that. So we're looking at this kind of beveled edge as being the outer top, and then the two mounting surfaces, or these two holes here, will be the bolts that run through the bike and allow that to be secured. It also allows me to see there is nothing behind this, so we should be easily able to run our screws this way and not have to worry about hitting anything. It also demonstrates that I was correct, and the plug for the stock fog lights, despite the fact that my bike never had them, is right here. So we'll free this. We're going to actually use this plug to plug in our new harness. So I'm going to get everything assembled now that we kind of know what we're looking at, and we'll test fit a few things. On the front of this panel, there's just a knockout plate. So this is going to get just kind of pushed out from that side and freed. It doesn't look like we have to do much except take out this one screw right here to get that to come free. So I'll get that out of the way, and then once I have my fog light mounted, I'm just going to do a test fit and see how it lines up with the panel. It looks like everything will mount pointing forward. So bracket here with the light coming off this way. I actually can't see any other way that could be, because otherwise the bracket would be in the way. So bracket will go here, light will mount off the front, and then we'll test fit the panel just to see how the alignment looks. Also looking at it, the lights themselves have a sort of C-shaped pattern. So we're going to want to make sure that when we align this, we match that with whatever the aesthetic we want on the bike is, which for me is going to be like that. So I'm going to make sure that this inside part of the C points towards the two mounting holes on the bracket to make sure everything's lined up correctly. So I'll get everything assembled, we'll get it loosely attached to the bike, and then we'll do a test fit. Okay, so the light is test fit. I've got my panel placed back onto the side, and I'm just using one body clip to kind of hold it in place, keep things aligned. And I like it. I like my top down. So height adjustment's good. I did end up angling the light down slightly to match the space a little bit better. I kind of wish it sat forward a little bit, but that's not an adjustment that I can do with this light. It's sort of where the bracket places it at this point. I guess I could figure out a way to space it forward more and have it sit more up front in that panel, but I'm not going to worry about that for today. So that's all placed. I'm going to take this panel off. We'll chat a little bit about the alignment of some of the pieces to make it look like that. Okay, with the panel back off, we can see how I've got the bracket placed here. So my light, this bracket, I have set so that the keyed holes in it, these kind of channels like this, are positioned in this way. So it's positioned down, and it's pressed all the way down as far as it can go so that the screws ride right up here in the valley. My thought process behind that is any vibration or anything is going to want to make this settle. If I flipped it this way, then I'd have to have this pushed all the way up. The light would sit a little bit lower, and as it vibrated, it could potentially meander down, which isn't what I want. I would, if anything, like the light to be higher, pointing down at the ground, since this is intended to be a fog light. So I've got these two bolts set. I haven't done the third one yet. And then I wanted to mention while we're in here too, these lights, when you orient them, the wiring harness is going to come out of one of the edges. You want to make sure that you pick the light that brings this wiring harness out of the bottom, because there's an access right here where you can feed that wire down and into the body to be plugged in, which isn't going to interfere with the side panel like it would if you had to go up and around. So orient your light so that that wire comes out of the bottom. And then you can kind of see from the side, I do have a slight downturn to my light to make things line up the way I want them to. Now that everything's in place, I'll use a Phillips head screwdriver to snug up this screw here to tighten up the angle on the light, and a socket to tighten these. So these are 3/8, the little silver ones that go on the bracket. So I'll be able to just get a 3/8 socket behind it, snug those up. And then these guys are 9/16. So these big bolts. When you're putting these bolts through this one, The lock nut does sort of interface with this piece of plastic. So you have to thread the washer in there and then run the bolt through the washer and then put the nut on. Otherwise you're gonna hit this and it's not gonna fit right. If you have a set of ratcheting box wrenches, it makes this very, very easy to do. Otherwise your clearances are a little bit tight, but you should be able to get in there with a ratchet as well. So I'll put the third bolt in, get all of this tightened up, and then we'll look at the wiring harness. All right, here's our finished assembly attached to the bike. So you see I've got all 3 bolts through. I've got these 2 bolts from the mounting bracket sticking into this void as well. That leaves me with the wire. As I mentioned, there's an access right here. So you can feed the wire down through. It'll come right through there. Then you can just grab onto it. Pull it up the rest of the way. Okay, we're just gonna kind of leave this hanging out of the bike. So that's what you're looking for when you're done. Again, I tightened the screw on the innermost side here because it's hard to get to. This one is still a little loose so that I can get my final angle correct, and then I'll tighten it up. And I'm gonna do that once I've got both sides connected and powered and before I put the panels back on. So we'll kind of see where they're hitting on the driveway and try to, or on the floor of my garage rather, try to get them about the same. So this is where you want to be per side, and then we've got the main wiring harness to deal with. And the wiring harness has to plug into the stock Foglights, which is here. And you have a choice on how you do this, or where rather you do this, because this little plug exists on both sides of the bike, and you can use either one. So it's a question of which side is less cluttered, which side you need, different access to. So I'll take a look at the other side and see there's a box about yay big that has to get secured somewhere up inside the bike. And then there's a wire that runs from that box to this light, and then a wire that runs from that box under this access piece to the other side, and then plugs into the other light. So I'm gonna pull the other side off, I'll get the other one mounted, and we'll take a look and see which side we wanna mount that box on. Okay, left side light, or driver side, however you wanna say it. Left side as you're riding it light is installed. I've got the plug down in here, routed again through the bottom, all exactly the same as the other side. And as I promised, here's the other Foglight plug. Looking at this side, there's a lot less going on in here. I've got the oil fill and a bunch of things on the other side, so I'm going to use this side for the control box. When I say control box, this is what I'm referring to. This is what breaks out your Foglight signal and separates it to the 2 lights and allows it to work as a daytime running light or a switched fog light. This is what mounts with that connector to that plug. So I'm gonna position this kind of up here under this panel. I'll zip tie it to the wiring loom that's already here, run the cable around and under, let's see, probably run it, free this one up, run it through here, plug it in, and run down through this gap right here. So that that's all connected, and then I'll run one of these pigtails back through, and the other one is gonna go up and over. And you can kind of see light kind of through the bike there. So it's really just a question of grabbing that plug, running your hand in here, and you should be able to go straight across the top with it, and there's not much really in the way. Kind of feel your way through and find a good spot for it to go where it's not gonna be laying against the engine or anything that's gonna get too hot. There's a few wires and a couple cables that kind of run through here that I can feel. You can sort of follow along with just to keep it up and out of the way. So I'll do that. So we'll bias it up against the underside of this frame member so it doesn't rest down on anything from the motor that might get too warm. It's gonna be very difficult for me to show you that, but essentially there's a way to kind of sneak it up and over, and I'll run through that and get my hands nice and filthy doing it. So I'll do that part. I'll check in once I've got the wires kind of in place and show you what we ended up with. All right, so here's what we're looking at. I've got my box here. It's zip tied on both sides to keep it kind of out of the way so it doesn't vibrate, doesn't get in the way of anything mechanical. I still have to cut the tails off my zip ties, but I'll do that in a minute. Left them on so you can kind of see where they are. So I've got this tied. This wire comes down, hooks into the factory plug. This plug has a little slide on it that secures it to the frame, so I just re-slid it back into the same spot. since I had enough wire to do so. I took the extra kind of excess wire for this light since it doesn't have as far to go, and bundled that up and zip tied all of that together. So that'll just hang here in this open spot, kind of out of the way. I've got my light here, and then the line runs from this box across. And to do that, I sort of fed this hand up inside and then reached in with this hand until I could feel the plug and pulled it through. There's a lot of stuff going on in here, so it was difficult otherwise to run it. But on that side of the bike, that wire comes down right here and runs down behind. It's zip tied in a few places here, runs across, plugs in here to that light. Now at that point, we should be ready to turn on the key and see the driving lights turn on. To get the fog lights to actually work, we're going to have to put a switch in, which is going to use the factory switch location and the factory switch wiring and just tap into it for us. But I'm going to turn it on and see if we have running lights first. So as you can see, we have lights. So the C outer ring lights up with the headlights. So these will always be on as long as the headlights are on, unlike that low driving light, which comes on with the accessory function. So we should be good to go. I'm going to get everything buttoned up and then we'll get that switch put in place. Okay, we're up on the bike. This is our fog light switch, and the stock fog light switch, if it had it, would be right here. And that's the switch we're going to use for this. So all the wiring and everything is under this panel. To get that panel off, you gotta take your key out, and this ring where it says off, on, and your whole frunk and service access pieces, this is actually called a locking ring. And if you grab it and twist, it will pull off. And this is actually what's holding this entire panel in place. Set that aside. And then this piece will lift up. Kind of hard to do with one hand. It'll lift up and out of the way. And you'll see it's already pre-wired. This left wire would be for your heated hand grips, if you had that. This right wire, though, is the one that we need. So we're gonna kind of pull this piece free and be a little careful with it because I don't want to scratch anything up. But essentially what we need to do is unplug this wire and be careful not to drop it. Like, we don't want this to fall down into the bike. We're going to unplug that wire and we're going to feed our new switch through this blank and plug it into that lead. All right, got the wire free. It's just your standard wiring connector. So it's got a little clip on it that you need to squeeze on the one side and then it'll pop loose. And I'll thread my other one through. So at the midway point here, I have my new pigtail connected to that wire. This wire is very short coming out of the bike. They give you quite a lot more for the kit. So you have some extra just to kind of fold and tuck in here. But with it set that way, before I plugged this in, I threaded this little locking nut on. And now I can get this in place and then tighten that to the bottom, which will hold the whole switch assembly in place. And then again, tuck my wires kind of in, and I'll be able to set this whole thing back in place and then relock it on with that locking cap. All right, panel is reinstalled and relocked down. Pardon how ridiculously dirty this is, but I don't know if you can actually see with the lights off from the back. So just like the running lights, this is keyed off of the headlights. So when I'm just in accessory mode, this isn't going to work. But when the bike is running, it'll turn on those daytime running lights there and allow the fog lights to work as well off of this switch. It's just a simple push button. This does remember its position, so if you have it in the on position, then your fog lights will just always be on when you start your bike, or you can key them on and off. Not bad, looks really clean. Matches perfectly to the amber for the side vent lights that I installed from TricLED in a previous video, so I like it. I'll do a couple shots of the bike from the outside with it running once I'm not in my garage. It is winter, so won't have to wait too long for it to get a little bit darker. But I'll do those and pop them up over here in the video, and then we'll be all set for this one. All right, that's going to wrap us up for this one. Not a bad project, pretty easy to do. You need a flat screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver, a T25 and a T20 Torx, and a 3/8 and 9/16 set of either sockets or box wrenches. Ratcheting box wrenches seem to work the best. But other than that, it uses all the stock wiring, uses the stock switch position. If you have fog lights, this will work as an in-place upgrade without having to do anything aside from run the wires that I showed, and then your stock switch will work just fine. Looks great. I'm very happy with the update, and just like everything I've gotten from TricLED, build quality is solid. No concerns, nothing there. So this being the end of a DIY dad video, I of course owe you a dad joke. So what do you call fog that can only ever see the negative side of things? A pessimist. Remember, with every project, it doesn't have to be perfect. Most important step is just to do it. No one's going to see the flaws unless you point them out. Have a great day. Ride safe. Catch you on the next one. Bye.